And now we have our final speaker that I would like to introduce, which is Professor Penny D. Sackett. So Penny is a distinguished honorary professor at the ANU's Institute for Climate, Energy and Disaster Solutions. In a previous role as director of the Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics as part of the ANU, she was responsible for the management of Siding Spring Observatory in Coonabarabran and Mount Stromlo Observatory during and after the catastrophic Canberra 2003 fires that produced the world's first documented pyrotornado. And as Australia's chief scientist from 2008 to 2011, Penny opened new channels of communication to the Australian public and was a vocal champion of long-term evidence-based cross-portfolio planning, particularly in relation to energy, water, climate change, food security, global epidemics, and lifelong learning. She has served as chair of the ACT Climate Change Council and as a member of the Science Advisory Board of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. So Penny will be discussing how climate disruption multiplies all threats to Australia. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you. You know, most of us today find our home on a beautiful ochre continent surrounded by sea. I'm gratefully joining you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri land. But wherever we are on the globe, all of us are traveling through space together on a spinning planetary ship called Earth. And except for the energy from the sun, our spaceship contains everything we need, everything we depend upon for life: air, water, food, shelter, community. And that life support is contained in the thinnest of layers. If you imagine the Earth the size of a soccer ball, then the oxygen-containing, climate-producing part of the atmosphere is only the thickness of 2 hairs. And most of the ocean is only 1 hair's width below the surface of that soccer ball. The dusting of soil that provides our food is so thin that you'd have to pile 1,000 layers, one atop the other, on that soccer ball in order for it to be visible with our human eye. But in the blink of a planetary eye, 100 years or so, humanity has fouled its own life support system. Yesterday, the 2024 Planetary Health Check was published, and our life support system is in bad shape. Humans have pushed the Earth substantially beyond several planetary boundaries into danger zones that carry high risk of destabilizing the whole Earth system. We've done this by causing mass movement of nitrogen and phosphorus throughout those layers, by emitting greenhouse gases that fuel dangerous global heating and disrupt the climate, by eroding biodiversity and biointegrity, and introducing synthetic chemicals, genetically modified organisms, and radioactive materials into Earth's layers. Atmospheric CO2 levels are at a 15 million year high, and average global temperatures are now higher than at any point since human civilizations emerged on Earth. Many climate impacts that 20 years ago were thought possible only at temperature increases of 3 to 4 degrees Celsius are now thought likely at 1.5 degrees of heating. We are virtually certain to reach that 1.5 degree guardrail in the next 5 to 10 years. Ejecting greenhouse gas pollutants into our spaceship's hair-thin air ducts increases other planetary risks as well. Climate disruption is an existential threat that sits as a hub in the interconnected web of risks to Australia. The National Climate Risk Assessment has identified 56 climate risks to Australia, and 11 of these have been deemed worthy of further in-depth study as a matter of high priority. Let me speak about a few. Climate disruption is a serious threat to food production systems because they are highly dependent on water resources and healthy ecosystems, which the turbocharged climate is damaging, including here in Australia, where water resources have been heavily compromised also by poor management. Health is central to human security. Climate disruption and the collapse of biodiversity are considered by global health professionals to be, quote, the biggest global health threats of the 21st century, unquote. Climate disruption compromises the health of Australians through longer and hotter heat waves, dangerous floods and storms, bushfire and bushfire smoke, increased mental and physical distress, and an increase in diseases spread by animals. Climate disruption hits Australians in the pocket as well, not only through damage and loss of property due to climate extremes, but also in sharply rising insurance costs. The rise of insurance premiums are being driven by the rising costs of climate disasters. And ecosystem destruction, exacerbated in speed and magnitude by climate disruption, is an enormous threat to human security. Why? Because it is ecosystems that keep the land, the air, and the water healthy through natural processes of reuse and recycling. In the Black Summer bushfires, made substantially more likely due to human-caused climate disruption, 3 billion individual vertebrates perished, and 21% of Australia's temperate and broadleaf forests were burnt. The Great Barrier Reef, the largest coral reef ecosystem in the world, is literally dying before our eyes, with 5 of the 7 mass bleaching events occurring in the last 10 years. The only way to substantially reduce the risk of these devastating outcomes is to rapidly reduce the release of greenhouse gases. Yet current ambitions of Australia and most other nations are woefully inadequate in this regard. Even if all the unconditional Paris Agreement national commitments were honored, the world would reach nearly 3 degrees of global heating by the time today's newborns are 75 years old. That is far above temperatures seen in the last 800,000 years, and 60% of the difference between a warm interglacial period and a frigid ice age, but in the opposite direction, into completely uncharted territory. We must do better. We must do better much faster. The relevant time scale for a massive U-turn isn't decades, it's years. Those thin layers of our common life support system are at stake. Earth sits at the center of all our peace and all our security. Thank you. Over to you, Tilly.